your Listen Local station, right here on the northern beaches of Sydney. You can find us on your radio dial at 88.7 and 90.3 FM. Can't get to a radio? No worries. You can always stream our program live from anywhere in the world at rnb.org.au. And for listening on your own schedule, our podcasts are available globally at rnbpodcast.com.au. So be sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Now, here is our latest podcast. Listeners, today we have a guest who is a friend of mine, and we're both artists, and we're going to sit in my lounge room and have a talk about art. And I'd like to introduce you to Sandra Garritano. Hello, Sandra. Thanks for coming and meeting me in my living room.
Well, thank you for having me.
We're going to talk to you about art today, but first of all, I want to talk to you about how you got into art.
Well, as a little girl, I was very clear the moment that I realized I was fascinated. And I was only like 4 years old. My father had put me into the first grade because I was so tall early. And the teacher put me between these two beautiful blonde girls with long ponytails. And one of them picked up her pencil and drew Mickey Mouse. I was so fascinated with the fact that you could do that. The idea that you could actually create something from nothing. And truly, that was the beginning of me wanting to be able to do that and pursuing art. And then when I got to signing up for classes in high school, all I wanted to do is take art. And my father said, you got to take cooking and sewing, being a typical Italian father, before you can take art. So I did that. And as a result, I have found through my life, it doesn't matter what the material is, I'm going to be creative with it.
Oh, terrific. Yeah, I'm a bit that way. I tend to go off in all directions. I dabble in art, as you can see. You're in my living room. I love art, and I love the culture and the people that are within the art.
Yeah.
I really do. Creatives. They are creative, imaginative, and loving people. They truly are. So you were telling me earlier that you also taught.
Yeah, so as soon, I had to take a 5-year degree in university, which covered all mediums. So I took welding and jewelry making, and printmaking and photography and graphics, oil painting and acrylics. So I had a really broad experience, and then I had to add another year onto my university degree to be a teacher. So I was a year behind my friends, and so I ended up getting a job about 2 hours away from our town in Akron, Ohio, teaching art in a little town called Steubenville, Ohio. Those of you who remember Dean Martin,
yes.
He came from Steubenville, Ohio. At the end of his show, he would say, I come from the armpit of America. It's a steel mill factory town. It's on the Ohio River, and the bellow of that white smoke coming out of those steel mills in this valley, it just sat over the town. That was my first teaching experience. And so every opportunity I had, I'd go back home. And when I went home on one weekend, my girlfriend said, let's go on an adventure, which is what we were known for doing. And she said, I'll go back to the university and see if we can go teach on a naval base or something in Europe. So when I came back 2 weeks later, she had every book there was in the Library of Australia, which was 3. Each of the books only had a few pages written about Australia. And she'd bought some luggage and said, we're going to Australia.
Oh, wow.
I said, what? What do you know about Australia? And so we chatted, and I said, no, not doing it. And so I went back to my school in Steubenville, Ohio. And this was back when the female staff room and the male staff room. So I was in the staff room, and I said, my friend wants to go to Australia. And my new friend from that year, she said, oh, that sounds fabulous. Let's do it. I said, you're as nuts as she is. I'll give you her phone number. So between the two of them, they talked me into going for an interview, and we were all hired at our first interview. And so we came to Australia in the early 70s when Australia really needed teachers. Little did I know they needed teachers in Blacktown and out west and in remote areas. So I was sent to Evans High School in Blacktown.
Really? I actually grew up from 6 years old to 16 years old in Blacktown.
Isn't that amazing to have that connection? Like, I had such close connections with those kids. I came in there with, just so much enthusiasm. And those kids adored me, and we just made the most wonderful art. And to the surprise of the principal, when I arrived, he said, "You have a $50 budget for the year.
Oh my gosh.
Your room's at the back of the school. Just try and keep them quiet." That was my job description. So I became very close friends with the other art teacher. She and I are both still very close. And we took our $50. We took a look at what was in the storeroom, which was paint and clay. There were some glazes. So we knew we had paint, and we were then traveling up to Parramatta from, we both actually ended up living in Parramatta from Blacktown. And there was an unclaimed freight there. I'd never heard of it. But they had all this material that no one had claimed. And so they would sell all this stuff off very cheaply. So they had bolts and bolts and bolts of fabrics, particularly bright colored brushed velvets or corduroy, but was like velvet. So we could buy like a whole bolt of this stuff for $5. So we started paying for stuff ourselves. And then next to Unclaimed Freight was a rubber factory that sold great big huge Hessian bags full of rubber chips. Being American, my art history was, the American pop artists. So Klaus Oldenburg was one of my favorites. So we started making soft sculptures. So we made a banana that was about 7 feet long with this bright yellow velvet fabric and stuffed it with these rubber chips. And we get the kids to buy back some of the material, whoever wanted to own the big banana at the end of it.
I wish I was in your class. Mine was boring. My art classes were boring.
No, I loved teaching. I gave it my all. And so anyway, and we did a tube of toothpaste with canvas, painted it white, had a mop head sticking out of it for the toothpaste, and a Kentucky Fried Chicken tub for the lid. And so we did that, and then we went to a lumber yard, and we tried to flirt with the boys so they'd give us some timber, and they did. So we had stretchers. So we did whatever you can to get those materials. And so, so we would get the timber, and then we'd get the canvas from the Unclaimed Freight. We'd sell that back to the kids, and we were making these really large, from a meter onwards, canvases with the acrylic paint that we had. We had enough paint to paint the city, but nothing to paint it on. So I went to the principal and said, could we have an art exhibition? And he said, oh yeah, just put the stuff on the staff room table. I said, oh no, that won't do.
No.
He had no idea what we were doing in the bowels of the school. And so I said, no, we'll need the library, the old library, which was a nice big room. So we put all that beautiful stuff in there. He walked in and his mouth dropped. Where did this stuff come from? And I explained what we'd been doing. So he brought me in and he gave me more money for the next year. And
how much more? Only a little or a lot?
Look, I can't remember, but it was substantial.
Oh, that's good.
And then I thought, I've come all the way from America to live by the water, because I grew up inland. So I went into him while he was thoroughly impressed with what had happened and asked him if there was any way I could move to a school by the water. And his best friend was at Barrenjoey High School.
So, wonderful
So then I got to Barrenjoey, and we would go beach combing and get shells to bring back to draw. And so I had a wonderful start of a career here in Australia. But at the end of the 2 years, I had to go back home.
Oh,
It
sad.
was only for 1 year.
Oh. Oh.
Because I loved Australia so much.
Everybody that comes to Australia loves Australia.
Well, I grew up in Ohio. I like to say as soon as I was old enough to walk, I walked out of there. That was with a degree, and I had $70 in my pocket, and I came to Australia.
Okay, so when you went back, what did you do over there, and how did you get back to Australia?
Well, when I went back, my family lived in Ohio, and my father had always wanted to move to Florida. He tried once when we were little, and he couldn't make a living, so we moved back to Ohio. Well, he and his brother had decided now or never, so they must have been, if I look back on it now, they were probably in their early 50s, maybe late 40s when they moved, probably 50s. And the two of them moved to Florida and bought houses next to each other, just a block from the beach. So when I came back from Australia, he was packing up the house, moving to Florida, which couldn't have been better for me because I was trying to decide where could I live in America. I needed to be by the water. I needed color. I needed sunshine and light. And as beautiful as Ohio can be, I'm not much of a winter girl, and snow and the lack of color just dampened who I really was. And so we moved to Florida. And when I got to Florida, it was, it's a Daytona Beach. It's a beach town. So you have everybody going there for their holidays. So I found it really difficult to settle in because I'd meet friends and then they'd be gone in 10 days. So I thought, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to, set yourself up here? I'd been for 19 job interviews day after day, and no one would hire you because they are skeptical of people coming down and not staying. So I thought, well, what can you do? So I thought, I know, I'll go to the local community college, and they put on plays. So I signed up to do stage sets for the local plays. That night I met a girl. She took me the next day. I started working in the restaurant she was working in. I met a fellow who was teaching at the local high school. He introduced me to the principal, and I was off.
Oh, well, that was God sent, really, wasn't it? Yeah.
So that creative spirit has really guided me right throughout my life. It's the fiber of who I am.
It usually is with artists, and any one that's creative. Musicians are very similar as well.
Yeah.
So how did you end up back in Australia?
All right, well, so I started teaching in the local high school, and then I became head of my department, which is a position very hard to give up, but I just loved Australia. And I came back for my summer break. In America, it's almost 3 months long. And I came back, and I was so excited to be back. And I'd made so many friends in the 2 years that I was here that I'm still close to many of those. And anyway, I came back. I still loved the place. It was winter, so the color wasn't as vibrant, but it was still the beautiful place I knew. The smells were familiar. The sound of the birds, the ocean, just totally different. Daytona Beach is 30 miles long, straight, and there's hardly much waves, they're very small waves, and just all the variety of our beaches, and being in a close proximity to such a vibrant city, being able to take a ferry over to anything in town.
Yeah, it's really convenient, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the Northern Beaches is just beautiful, and you can jump across to the city whenever you need to and back again. The convenience is amazing.
And I always find it fascinating why you end up living where you live. I mean, Australia's a big place. I was sent to Blacktown. I ended up living in Gladesville so that I could be closer to some action as a young person, and drove the distance to Blacktown in and out. But when I came back, I moved to the Northern Beaches because that was where my best friend came from, Collaroy. And so when we came down the Spit Bridge for the first time...
Oh, isn't that a wonderful sight?
It was breathtaking. And my friends still say to me, you're the oh my God girl, because I just kept saying that over and over again with all the beauty that I saw here.
Whenever I go away, I always know I'm home as I come down that bridge. It's just the most wonderful thing to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I stayed for that summer, and then I went back and started to make my plan. I'd bought a house, and I was, ensconced in my job. But that particular job allowed you to take a year's leave of absence. So I applied for the year's leave of absence, and of course I could never go back to it. I was staying in Australia. And so that's the time that I was back in the States.
And so now I'm going to talk to you about your art and how you work your art and what mediums you use, etc. And I've had a look at your Instagram. Give the listeners your Instagram address.
The Instagram address is Sandra with a _ Garritano, Garritano.
Terrific, because there's a lot of your art on there and it's spectacular. And so tell us a little bit about the mediums you use and where you get your ideas from, because your art is very varied. You've got facial, and you've got bushland, and you've got abstract. So tell us a little bit about your processes.
Well, as I'd mentioned to you, I've always been creative no matter what the medium. So I always gave that energy into my classroom and to the students. So when I was preparing to retire, I started thinking, what direction am I going to go in? I did a lot of silversmithing in the last 20 years of my career. And that's so tight, and the precision of that. And it's very hard on your eye, and breathing in those chemicals and so forth. So I wanted something more fluid. And so painting was what I thought I'd do. And so anyway, one of my students had the best haircuts, always looked fantastic. At the time I had short hair and I was getting the worst haircuts. And I said to him, "Where do you get your hair cut?" He said, "My grandma." I said, "Do you think she'd cut mine?" Thinking this little old lady in her back room cutting hair. Anyway, I had an appointment the next day at Grandma's house. Anyway, I got there, and sure enough, it was in the kitchen in the back where the dining room should have been, was her little salon, and it was paintings. I said to her, "Oh, I'd love to start painting." She said, "How about the two of us dedicate a year and we paint together?" So that's how it started. At the time, we were both so tentative, and we were afraid to make mistakes, and what am I going to put on here, and how am I going to do it? And so we just started playing and experimenting and looking at other artists and looking on YouTube, going to classes. For a year, we dedicated ourselves to this process. Then we both went into our own studios, and since then we've shared many exhibitions. And so at this point, you give me anything to be creative with, whether it's a cardboard. I actually work on paper or wooden panels or enormous canvases. And all I have to do is have a blank space and some paint, and I'm off.
So there's one question our listeners are asking before we go any further with your art. Was the haircut a success?
I'll tell you what, she was a godsend. And when she retired, I was in a big jam to try and find someone to compete with how well she did. Being an artist herself, she knew how to cut hair
that's
and how
great.
to color it. And yeah, but she's retired long ago from hairdressing and is a full-time artist and teaches full-time. And she's in her 80s, so she's the most amazing woman.
So you were saying earlier that, was this the same friend or a different friend that you got a grant with?
No, different friend.
Okay, so tell us about that friend and the grant and how you...
I was having an exhibition in Glebe, and I rocked up to the first day, and there was a bouquet of flowers with a little note. I thought, oh, isn't that lovely? I wonder who did that. And I open up the note, and it says, when was the last time you had a secret friend? And it still hadn't registered. But in college, we had secret friends, someone to kind of look after you, because it was a commuter college, so you didn't actually have a home.
Oh, right.
and we weren't living there, so it was hard to make friends. So anyway, she was one of the secret friends. We were in that group, and she put in the card a composite of our group, the photographs, and circled my picture, 17-year-old, and her picture, 17-year-old, and she put her phone number next to her picture. And I was so chuffed, so tickled. I thought, oh my gosh, she sent this from America, and how wonderful. She must have looked it up on the internet. Anyway, somebody said, Sandy, that's a Australian phone number. So I called it. She lived in Waverton.
Oh, I just got shivers. That's amazing.
She was there within minutes, and we had 40 years to catch up on, and we're best buddies now. And we've done a lot of things together. She's a flautist, has her own band, and she and her partner have a property down on the Central Coast, and she brings her band down there, and they hire a gentleman from the conservatory to help bring the band up to a higher level every year.
Oh, wow.
And I go down, and I'm the gopher. I go for this and go for that.
But that's a lot of fun.
And that's a lot of fun because I get to listen to the live music. And then on the Saturday night, she has a community concert, and people come from the community because it's a very small little beach community, and I get to enjoy all that fun.
Oh, how wonderful.
So most of the people in the band, the originals, are from Sydney. So they're driving the 5 hours down there and paying for accommodation, and they pay for the gentleman from the conservatory. So I'm sitting there thinking, a couple years back, I said, why don't we apply for one of the grants and take over one of the facilities that are on offer, like the Curl Creative Space. So we did. We got the grant, and it was a collaboration of music and art, and how there are similarities between abstraction and jazz, and she's a jazz flautist. And so we ended up doing this collaboration. We had a wonderful time.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And how long did that run for?
2 weeks. Yeah.
Oh, that would have been something. I have a girlfriend who, like you and your friends, we spend time whenever we can together and do art and do courses. And she's just been through university and just finished it, actually. And we spend that time together, and it's just so fulfilling. She has spent some time over the years with exhibitions at the Curl Art Space, so we know it well.
It's 105 Abbots Road, Curl. It's the creative space. It used to be the old Boy Scout Club, and the council has put it together as an art center, and it's just the most wonderful space.
It works really well, doesn't it?
All recycled materials, big open spaces, great lighting, a lovely deck out the back. So
plenty of parking around there. Yeah. Look, it's been wonderful talking to you, Sandy, and nice to meet you. And Maggie and I, for those who remember her as an artist and a comedian on TV, Maggie Scott is still around. So support your local artists. They work very hard and have a lot of fun with what they paint, and it's lovely to see when we walk into a room, real art on the walls. It really is. And
it changes the whole feeling of the room, doesn't it?
It does. But thanks, Sandy, for coming along. I really appreciate you popping in.
Thanks so much.
Australia, the lucky country. We've got meat pies. We've got the world's best beer. But most importantly, top of the list, we've got Radio Northern Beaches 88.7, 90.3. Now hitting the entire world on www.rnb.org.au.